We have, and you've just heard a little bit from Brendan, but I'm very pleased to introduce Brendan Norris from Fixable.co, because he is establishing what basically Guido was suggesting, and that is pairing repairers with people who need things repaired, because I myself was someone who had a broken microwave, and it was a very nice microwave. I don't really want to waste more money buying another microwave, but it wasn't working, and it simply wouldn't take the 1 minute that I had to do to heat up whatever it was. And I couldn't get anyone, the manufacturer or any repairer, to look for it. Even any electrician would ring me and say, it's not worth my call-out fee to look at this microwave, buy yourself another one. My friend's husband, who's a little bit handy, had a look at the touchpad, took the top plastic layer off with a hairdryer and then blew out some moisture, and Bob's your uncle, it works again. That was a very simple example, but often it is those very simple, quick fixes that I don't, and I agree with John, I don't have the ability or the skill to actually do repairs, or I may not be able to find the repairs, but there are really great people whose business it is to perform those repairs, and people and companies like EMPR who are providing the spare parts to enable repair in IT. It's a huge benefit to the community to be able to get your equipment fixed in that way. I'd like to hand over now to Brendan Norris, and Brendan's going to share his great idea of what he's developing, and I'm really interested for him to share this with you. Over to you, Brendan. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Leanne. And hi, everyone. It's really great to be here for this discussion today. Leanne mentioned I've started it's a social enterprise called Fixable. And the origin of Fixable was that I'm one of those people who I just don't have a practical bone in my body, and I'm just not good at fixing things at all. I don't have the skills or the knowledge. So I was constantly calling my father or my father-in-law, mother-in-law, or other friends who do have those skills. And it kind of occurred to me that there's people like that in every neighbourhood, everywhere in Australia, who might not do repair for a job, but have great skills that they're more than willing to share with their community. So I thought that I would create a way to connect people like me with people like them. First of all, I'll just apologise as well. I'm in the Macedon Ranges in Victoria, and for the first time in weeks, the sun has come out and it's straight through my office window. So I apologise for the hat, and if you can't see me very well. I was fortunate to be awarded a grant from Sustainability Victoria's Recycling Victoria Fund, and that allowed me to get Fixable off the ground, employ a few contractors to help me with certain aspects of it, and begin promoting it in one of the local councils here in Melbourne. The first iteration was pretty much Repair Tasker, as Guido referred to it. Such a great name. I wish I'd thought of that. But what we have found is that the software that we used is so important for the usability, and the first software that we used wasn't as easy as it could have been. So people were active on there, but the interaction among members of Fixable wasn't great, and the flow through the process of getting something repaired wasn't great. So we spoke to a lot of members, and we moved on to a next iteration, which is based entirely around an online community. This platform that we're using now is really, really usable. It's kind of based around social media that most people are familiar with, but the ability to interact with other people and engage and connect is the primary function of it. And I'll show you a little bit of the platform shortly, but I wanted to touch on a couple of things. Firstly, when we have something really expensive or valuable to us, we're more than happy to take it, look for a professional repairer and take it to them and pay for it to get fixed. But it's the cheaper things that, like Leanne mentioned, her microwave, any professional repairer is going to say it's not worth your money, go and buy a new one. But it's those cheaper things, and whether it's clothing or appliances, furniture, they're so disposable these days. So my thinking was that it's those things that end up in landfill. So how do we stop them? And with these hobbyist repairers, as we call them, who are in every neighbourhood everywhere, they're the sort of people who are more likely to be able to charge an affordable price or do it for free if they're that way inclined, and prevent some of those cheaper items from ending up in landfill. So that was the idea behind Fixable, was connecting people with who need things fixed with those either hobbyists or professionals, depending on their need and the item they're getting fixed, and making a single online place for that to happen. So where we are now with the platform, we've kind of evolved the idea, I guess, and based it on community and interaction among members. And the idea is that it would be a single place for repair and reuse, repurposing, selling end-of-life items so somebody else might be able to use them, that sort of thing. So not only repair, but a little bit broader than that. The idea is that we can have, I guess, function within the platform for a whole range of people. So whether you're a hobbyist fixer, a professional fixer, you can use the platform to connect with people who are happy to pay for your skills. And we have a space within the platform precisely for that. If you're a DIYer, you can use it to ask questions, seek advice from other people who might have the skills or knowledge that you need. If you're into grassroots community action, it's all about discussion. So you can ask questions or post polls, do surveys, promote events. It really is a really flexible platform. And we kind of see it as a pretty much something for everyone. So if I could share my screen, I'll just show you what I'm talking about here. So this is the platform in the web browser. Can also use it as an app, a mobile app on iOS and Android, or in your browser on your smart device. The address is community.fixable.co, so if you're in the room and you want to have a quick look, please go for it. There's a number of ways to use it. This is my home screen, which is just like a feed of all of the things that I'm interested in and follow on the platform. Now that'll be different for every person who's on here because they follow different things. There's a discovery screen, which lets me see what the top posts are that have been posted recently, and I can follow those types of discussions. I can see members near me, or I can see members with a particular role. So whether they're a hobbyist fixer or a professional fixer, a repair enthusiast, a community group. We do have a number of repair cafes who have joined the platform, and they use it to promote events, which is a really important and really nice way that they're using the platform. So here we can see every repair event happening around Australia over the coming weeks. So you can promote an event on here, you can arrange it, you can seek RSVPs. There's a whole number of ways of using those events. We have topics within here so that if you're asking a question, you can tag it with one of these topics, whether it's upcycle and repurpose or spare parts or a type of repair. And then other people who follow those topics can, your question will come up in their feed and they'll be able to ask or answer your question or provide advice. We have recently set up a couple of spaces which are taking the place of our legacy platform, which was all about connecting people with a fix. If you need something fixed right now, go here and you can find a fixer, or you can sell things. So these two places are a marketplace for stuff. Basically, if you want to buy, sell, swap, lend, borrow, anything related to repair or reuse. And the other one is for find a fixer or repurposer. Now these are brand new. We've literally just set these up and haven't really promoted them yet. So there's no activity in here apart from Kiara. We see find a fixer or repurposer as the repair tasker section of the platform, so that if you need something fixed right now and you're not someone who can do it yourself, then you would go here and you'd be able to search for somebody or post them a video or photo of your issue and arrange for them to fix it for you. I'll just stop sharing there because everyone's probably getting bored of watching that. So the big picture with Fixable is to make repair mainstream again. That's what we're trying to go for. We're working with councils. We're just starting to work with councils to kind of roll it out in their local areas. And that's the model that we see working going forward. In Victoria here, all councils have mandates to work towards a circular economy. So we'll be working with councils to promote fixable and repair and reuse in general in their areas. A long-term vision, we have a really big vision. We'd love to see accreditation courses. We can also run courses on Fixable. We can get people accredited on there, get them working towards genuine careers in repair. Then we could approach manufacturers or other companies so they could outsource their repair to a cohort of accredited and skilled repairers that we would have on board. We've got a really big vision for it, and it could kind of go anywhere. So it's very exciting to be doing it. It's evolving as we go and as we see how people want to use it. So we're very flexible with how it's going to work and what it's going to become. For example, Karen and Danny are just endless sources of great advice and feedback. So we listen to everybody. We have open conversations with everybody on there about how they'd like to use it and how we could make it better. Yeah, I'll leave it there, Leanne, if we want to continue with the discussion, and obviously be happy to answer any questions as we go through.
It was great. It was good for me to learn about that too. I might ask one question. Is it could it be like a yellow pages where commercial businesses who sell spare parts and services can sign up as well? Because I think there's a real role here to help repair businesses actually make themselves more visible. Absolutely.
Yeah, we'd love to promote businesses because, as I said, we have, with expensive items or you need spare parts that you can't get anywhere else. Businesses are the only places that you can get those or certain types of parts or items, and the only ones who could do certain types of repairs. So absolutely, we would love to have businesses on there. We would probably have a separate space for them so people know that when they go there, they're speaking with businesses, and businesses would be free to promote what they do, include links to their online stores or however they want to do it.
We've had some comments. Karen and Danny Ellis, who are Mendit Australia, are very passionate repairers. They don't work within a repair cafe as such, but they are travelling tinkerers, and so they travel across Victoria and offer their services at a variety of repair cafes. And this model is a great model, but it does, and I think we need to acknowledge that for many repairers who volunteer their time, there is an expense or a cost to the individuals. For Karen and Danny, it's often petrol money or travelling in between the community events, which, they really support, but they're out of pocket. For some, or I know for some of the volunteers at other repair cafes, they're actually bringing along their own tools. For example, they'll bring their own drill or their sharpening stone or their sewing machine. So there's this issue about equipment as well. I know that some repair cafes have been very successful in getting access to local council funding through different grants, etc. But this question of, could there be sponsorship of repair cafes? I know that the Gap Repair Cafe, for example, got some sponsorship from Bunnings, which was fantastic, and Bunnings was willing to provide them with some tools, drills, etc., that actually helped them establish their repair cafe. So that is this issue about the Scottish Government providing funding. There is certainly room for councils, whether to work in with councils or different state and federal levels of government, to provide support, or at least a scheme where repair cafes could access to help them, because it is such a community service. And we can't, as we've said, we can't expect volunteers to continue in that way. Do we have any other questions or comments through Slido? I think there's a microphone, Kanchana. Sorry.
Maybe you want to give someone else a chance, but I certainly have.
Yes, I think Renee's going. No, Renee's. Sorry, we'll just.
Brendan mentioned, I think, about a gap, I suppose, for community repairers where items are less expensive, I suppose. And so there's a gap for some, being able to access a service to repair those. My local repair cafe in Highton have pointed out that it's a really big issue for them when people bring items that are really poor quality. They're sort of in a difficult spot about trying to repair those when they're not designed to be repaired, are really not, is it worth the repairer's time, volunteer time, to try and repair it? And so that's something they wanted brought up or discussed. Yeah.
That's an interesting one. I don't know any repair cafes that actually turn things away on the basis that this is too cheap to fix. I think from my experiences, and I'd be interested to hear from those of you, I know that we have a lot of repairers out there who are conveners and both volunteer repairers in the community repair space. But I think even things that perhaps may not be the best made products, sometimes there is joy in having them fixed. But certainly I have seen examples of, as we said at the beginning, it's not everything that can be repaired, or it's not reasonable to repair them. So I think that's certainly part of the role of repair cafes also, that training, for example, if you take your garden shears or knives back every week or every month, I'm sure that what they're wishing you to do is really take away the skills so that you'd be able to do that yourself, or so that you're empowering people as well. But I think there's issues. Monica, you have some comments perhaps. We might... Would you like to just identify yourself for the...
Sorry.
Thank you.
Is that on? Monica Andrew. I run a clothing and textile repair cafe at the University of Canberra. I also volunteer at a couple of other repair cafes around Canberra. I want to move away from the commercial aspects of repair. And one of the reasons commonly that people bring things to repair is because they value it. And it doesn't matter the age and it doesn't matter the quality. And Kate Fletcher, a researcher in this area in Britain, has identified what she calls the craft of use. And she argues that in regard to clothing, because I say that is my area, it's less about the quality of the construction or the materials used, but how people relate to the item as to how long it will last, how prepared they are to repair it and keep it going. And I have had people bring into my repair cafe, one example was a really cheap acrylic jumper. It was brand new and it was damaged. It had been poorly made. But she really loved that one, and it was a very simple repair. So, and I hear that again and again, and even at the electrical table at some of the other repair cafes I volunteer, surprisingly people bring in items that, and again we hear the words, it's my favourite. And that makes sense when you're talking about a dress or a jacket or something, but it also gets applied to lamps and other electrical items. You know, if there's the story behind it in many cases, it might have belonged to a parent or a grandparent, and so that there's the emotional attachment. Whether those people would be prepared to pay to have that repaired, I don't know, but I think we have to acknowledge the emotional attachment to items that is a driving force in undertaking repairs in many cases.
I think that's a very good point, and I can share one of my first experiences at the Sandgate Repair Cafe. A grandmother brought her grandson in who had his school uniform damaged in a tiff, I think, at school, and she wasn't able to repair it herself, and it literally brought tears to her eyes and my eyes because he had his pocket sewn back on and he was able to go back to school. And so there's that whole kind of really feel-good story, and it really was a wonderful moment, I think, in terms of that sharing of the skill of mending something that seemed quite simple, but it wasn't otherwise going to be done in time for him to participate in the school photos, for example. So I think, you know, there's some really positive stories. Perhaps Julie, you're also in this session. Thank you very much, Brendan. I thought we might swap it around a little bit, Guido, and invite Julie perhaps to give her contribution now, given that we're talking, and Brendan, stay on, because I think this is part of really we're trying to run this as a panel so that discussion can flow a little bit more. But I think I'd like to introduce Julie Bolton, who's based here in Canberra, but she's with the Monash, she's on the program, Monash Institute of Sustainable Development, my apologies. So we're really grateful to have you here, and over to you, and just to continue this conversation. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I wasn't ready. I was waiting for another 15 minutes. Okay, no, that's all right. Okay, so I thought I'd start because I'm going to talk about clothing. I might walk over there for a second. Okay, I'm going to have to do this. So I thought I'd start because I'm going to talk about clothing and take a slightly different tact. So whenever I go to conferences and hear people start talking about clothing, I always sit there and go, I wonder what they're wearing. So I thought you guys might be thinking that, going, I wonder what she's wearing. So I'm going to tell you what I'm wearing. I'm wearing, that's why I'm going to go like that. So I have new shoes on. It's the first pair of new shoes that I've bought in 4 years. Usually I work from home, and the pair of shoes that I wear nearly every day is a pair of bright red trainers that I stole from my daughter when her feet got too big. And I love them and wear them everywhere. But recently I've had to, as COVID has slightly dissipated and we've been able to re-enter the world, I kind of thought, man, I might need a pair of professional-looking shoes. So I put professional-looking shoes on today. I didn't buy them just for today, though. Important point. The socks I have on, I just stole them from my husband's sock drawer because I needed a pair of black socks. There's a big hole, which is cutting off circulation in my right foot, but we'll keep going. The jumpsuit I am wearing is, I don't quite know how old it is. It was gifted to me in 2018 by a good friend who was quite aghast at the life change I was going through. So I decided in 2018 that I was not going to buy any more clothes and just went, right, that's it. Like no clothes, no secondhand clothes, no new clothes, nothing. Like it's too much stuff, right? So I just said, I'm not going to buy anything. I'm going to try for a year not to buy anything. Full disclosure, I almost lasted the year and now I do occasionally buy new clothes. But this jumpsuit, my friend who has this constant, well, she has a side hustle which I know a few people do, especially the younger generation it seems, who are constantly on Depop. So she has a side hustle where she finds clothes often at Material Pleasures, which is in Canberra, a really good secondhand store in Canberra, where she goes and finds gems and then she resells them for a slightly higher price than what she bought them at. She was really concerned for my mental well-being that I decided to stop shopping for clothes. So she came over one day and gifted me this jumpsuit and said, I just think you need something new in your life. And I'm not sure gifting fits within the rules. Like, I'm really conflicted. And she went, no, it does. Like, you can have this jumpsuit. And the problem was there was a rip in the back of the jumpsuit when she gave it to me. So it was half, like, you could still wear it, but you had to have a really long jacket over it so no one could see the rip. So I went and got it repaired. And it's perfect. Well, I think it's perfect and I love it and I wear it a lot when I come to occasions like this, and I shouldn't be wearing like my usual, ripped jeans and a t-shirt. So I put that on. And then my jacket here, this is polyester. Usually I hate polyester and we could go into hours of discussions over why I hate polyester. But sometimes material that might not be as sustainable as other material does have a purpose. If you buy it, if you think about what you're buying it for, and longevity reasons can often help. I bought this jacket when I was working in an office years ago, because I was trying to work it out on the drive over here. It's at least 10 years old. And I still think actually, well, I think you might disagree, but I think it looks brand new. Like, I just think, man, that's amazing. Like, that's pretty good value for money. That I can bring that out of my cupboard and put it on and go, well, there you go. That's a pretty good outfit, I think. And my glasses, just to top it off, because I'm not going to get into my undergarments because that could get weird. My glasses are made out of recycled plastic. So there's an awesome company, Dresden Opticals in Sydney, and they make just the one size frame and just in all different kinds of colours, and it's all recycled plastic that they say comes from the ocean, and I totally believe them. So that's what I'm wearing. Now we're going to talk about why repairing is a radical act, which isn't my statement, it's someone else's statement that we're going to get to. You guys probably already know this or are very familiar with the stats, and I'm sure many of you in the room, I can see lots of nods already, would have seen the Four Corners expose about the amount of clothing that is ending up in Ghana. Some of it is coming from Australia. A lot of our clothing, our secondhand clothing, ends up in the Pacific, and you will get the same, not quite to the same extent of the image that we've got here with dead white man's clothes, which is in Ghana, but the situation in the Pacific where a lot of Australian clothes end up is pretty horrific also. So Australians dispose of 6,000 kilograms of fashion and textiles. So that includes bedding, towels, cushion covers, that general items, curtains, that's included in that figure, every 10 minutes. So on average, it's 23 kilograms of textiles per person per year. It's a huge, huge, huge problem. Huge problem. But is it actually just a waste problem? And this is, again, something that you guys are completely familiar with. Actually, it's a chicken or egg problem, isn't it? Like, what comes first? The fact that we have this waste, or the fact that what we're producing plus what we're choosing to consume is leading to waste? I actually think we've got a massive production problem. We are overproducing what we need to an astronomical extent. And then we're also consuming. So if you can read some of these figures here, there's a recent, so I'm part of a reference group with the Australian Fashion Council, which is currently undertaking product stewardship scheme research and analysis for the Australian clothing sector. John, I think you've provided some amazing advice and background on what should be in a product stewardship scheme. And Peter Allen, who's done some amazing statistical work and the data analysis that sits behind it, because for a very long time, textiles, fashion, has been totally ignored in Australia. Just hasn't been thought of in the same way as glass, plastics, tyres, paper. So we need to get textiles into the mainstream, clothing into the mainstream as an issue, because it is a really significant issue. So we're importing 55 pieces of new clothing per person per year. That's huge. Like, that's a huge amount of clothing that we're importing, that we're bringing in. You don't need that many pieces of clothing. Like, no one does. That's an extraordinary amount of clothing. Clothing production worldwide has doubled. And clothing use, so the amount that we're actually using our clothing, has significantly decreased. So we're buying more, we're producing more, and we're wearing it for less. And that's not cool either. And there's a whole range of reasons as to why we might be doing that, but overall it's not great. And that picture in the middle, so I don't know whether anyone's stopped and thought about how our clothing is actually made in the first place and where it's made. We don't produce a lot in Australia anymore. I think the statistic at the moment is 3% of the amount of clothing in Australia is actually, that we have in Australia, is actually produced in Australia. It's mostly produced, the amount of the clothing that we buy in Australia mostly comes from Vietnam, Indonesia, and Bangladesh. This is a river. I think this photo is a river in Indonesia. And you might be familiar with the documentary The River Blue. So that talks about the chemicals that go into clothing and how rivers will run the colour of the season. So, as they're dyeing the clothing. So this year, it's indigo. So the river will run indigo because of the amount, and that's not natural indigo, because of the amount of dyes that are being used in the clothing. So we're buying heaps and getting rid of it. This is just quickly to show you, and this is in one of the Australian Product Stewardship, the Australian Fashion Council's recent reports also. This is just to quickly tell you that there's multiple steps along the clothing production chain, right? So we start from the fibre. So you have to think of what's actually in our clothing. Is it cotton? Is it hemp? Is it linen? What goes into it? Then how you produce that textile into the actual fabric, the design, manufacturing, distribution, retail, using. At every stage along that chain, there are environmental impacts and social impacts. But it's really important to stop and think that producing a fibre, be it cotton, be it a polyester, it will involve some element of waste. It involves energy, it involves water, it affects biodiversity, and there are some chemicals involved. So you have to start to think, what's the actual impact that's going into producing our clothes? These are just a couple of really quick statistics, or a couple of figures. So climate change and biodiversity loss, which I'm particularly saddened, might be the adjective there, I'm sad about and feel quite passionate about. So fossil fuels are used in synthetic fibre production, so that's all your polyester and your nylons, energy use and transport. And fibre production, all of fibre production, 1% of global carbon emissions, and the industry as a whole is said to contribute 10%. These figures are a little bit contested, so they do need to be taken with a grain of salt, but the amount of carbon emissions that clothing has on our world carbon budget is huge. And biodiversity, the same thing. Production effects will include affecting our soil degradation, deforestation, there's an increase in monocultural cultivation, all of this stuff, all this bad stuff happens. And if things don't change, the fashion industry, it's predicted that the fashion industry could use a quarter of the world's remaining global carbon budget by 2050 because we just keep producing. Production levels and consumption levels are not stopping. And what does all of that mean? Well, again, I'm sure I'm not telling anyone here anything new. Everyone knows that we've got a massive issue with our global material footprint. And what that means is that we're using up the Earth's resources way faster than the Earth can cope. So I'm sure, again, everyone's heard of Earth Overshoot Day, and that was last Thursday. Actually, in Australia, it was March the 23rd, I believe. So, yeah. So it's and just to explain what that means quickly, that means by March 23rd in Australia, we've used up all of our allocation of resources for the year. There's a long way to go until the end of the year, right? March to December, we're in deficit. It's not a great way to run a budget. So this is where my work comes in. I work a lot on the Sustainable Development Goals. And so my big thing is, we have this blueprint for the world, we have to fix a lot of issues, how do we go about doing it? My baby is SDG 12, which is responsible production and consumption. What does that mean? How do we ensure that we're actually producing things responsibly? How do we produce clothing responsibly? And how do we actually consume responsibly? What does responsible mean in this context? How do we make sure that we're not damaging the planet and we're not damaging people? So sustainable development is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Pretty simple definition. We're not meeting that at the moment. Like it's pretty standard. Where does repair fit within this? So repair for me is part of this idea of a circular economy. And we've all spoken about a circular economy, so again, telling you what you already know. Circular economy is seen as one method or one tool of implementing SDG 12. So to get to responsible production and consumption, let's implement a circular economy. That's the way that we can start to fix the damage that we've been doing. So what I like about this is that it's putting repair on this list of R strategies. This is from Alice Payne, who again is doing a lot of work with the product stewardship scheme for clothing. So she said, right, well, repair is one of these key strategies and it's about extending the lifespan of product and its parts. My question to you, is that all that repair is doing? Is that all that repair should do? You don't have to answer yet, but you can think about it. Because my controversial point, although I think probably again we'd all agree with this, is that circular economy is probably not going far enough. Like, I think with circular economy, love the concept, but I feel we've still got products. We're kind of lulling ourselves into an idea that it's okay to then continually produce and continually consume because we're doing it in a circular way. So if it's circular, well, that's okay. So we can repair things and that's okay. But is it? Because I really like this diagram, which is not mine, I wish it was, where we actually start to think about flourishing. And this gets to this gentleman, I believe you were saying before about actually shifting the economy and thinking about what is GDP for? What are we actually thinking about when it comes to the economy? And I think it's flourishing. I think it's where we're talking about this idea of well-being. And repairing is part of this well-being. We know that repairing brings people joy. Repairing's bringing communities together. Repairing clothes over a cup of tea and having a chat, like that's amazing. And repairing, I also believe firmly, it's a generational gap filler, if you will. There's a little group that I keep trying to get my kids into, but it's sold out every school holidays. Down in the local hall, there's 2 or 3 women, older women, retired, who come together and put on a little crocheting and sewing workshop for kids in primary school, and it's sold out every school holidays. And to me, that is just pure joy, having some lovely grandma sitting there with a cup of tea and having some grade 5 and grade 6 kids in there, having a chat, learning how to do things for an hour. Like that's flourishing. That's societal and environmental well-being right there, for me anyway. So I think we want to put repairing, I think we're holding ourselves too low almost, the bar's too low to say that repairing's great because we're part of this circular economy. Actually, repairing so much more than that. I have this picture here on the right-hand side, just again to bring it back to the fact that, man, we are so lucky that we have so many clothing options in this country, because this is an upcycled tent from a refugee camp, And it's all about a call to action on climate change, where this amazing fashion designer made all of these incredible outfits out of refugee tents to highlight climate change. And I just think that was quite fitting and very much a juxtaposition with that. And well, hang on, aren't we aiming for flourishing and well-being for everybody? So this is my last couple of slides. We need a shift in mindset. Like, we need to totally go, repairing is ace, and we need to get everyone on board with this, because to repair is to reimagine. So I'm a huge fan of Triple J's Like a Version, which is on Friday mornings. If you don't know it, you have to listen to it. And it's where people take a song, like an artist will take a song and reimagine that song. So that song, they reinterpret it and they turn it into something else, using the same lyrics and maybe a little bit of the same beat, but they make it their own. And that's what I think repairing with clothing is, right? Repairing, you can reimagine. And I love fashion. Like, I have no shame at all standing here going, I think fashion's incredible. Fashion, like wearing an outfit that makes you feel, I don't know, however it makes you feel, the fact it makes you feel something is pretty exciting. So why don't we embrace that, but make it our own? It doesn't mean that you go out and buy something new. It means that you create something from what you already have. It means you go to the op shop and you cut that dress up into something else, or you get that repaired. You get the jumpsuit that your friend no longer wanted that you think is fab and bring it out when you've got to go to an important occasion. Like, it's, I think it's really important to celebrate that. There's some great work again being done at QUT. They're doing a lot of research around this, on the fact that you actually stop and think about who you are as a wearer. And maybe this applies maybe to maybe high schools, where you would go in and have this conversation and say, don't go to Shein and buy copious amounts of clothes. Don't go to those fast fashion chains where they're not doing great for the world. Stop and think about who you are as a wearer, and then imagine yourself there, and that would just be so much better for everybody. And then you also repair because you love. I think this is really important, and this was... Someone made this point, forgive me, I can't remember who it was. Someone was talking about, actually it was you, yes, Monica? Yes, Monica, it was your point, about how people come to the repair cafe saying, but I love this, but this is an item that I really care about, and it might not have any monetary value, but the value to me is really significant. And so you repair because you love, and I love Patagonia. I don't own anything by Patagonia, but I love Patagonia. Don't Buy This Jacket was an ad they ran a couple of years ago on the big Black Friday sales in America, where Black Friday is this huge selling day, and they actually closed all their stores. And they ran this ad saying, don't buy this jacket. And it was all about fix what you already have and spend time with your family and go into the outdoors. Don't come into the shops. And their whole is awesome, right? Like, what an awesome model. And they also have this whole thing about we're in business to save our home planet and build the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, and use business to inspire. Like, that's an amazing company, a clothing company. It's an amazing company. And they've got their whole care and repair scheme, and they're doing it. Excuse me. I don't have COVID, I just have a cold. So they're doing it because they totally love the planet. Like, they love the planet, and that's what it all comes down to. We repair because we love the planet. Like, we love our earth, and we know the damage that new clothes, bad production, bad consumption is doing to our planet. So I have this little picture here of a van. So in 2015, and they've done it subsequently also, but in 2015 was kind of their big kick-off year, where they built this van, and it's a biodiesel truck, converted biodiesel truck. It has solar panels on top. Inside, it's like this cute little gnome village, it looks like. And they actually travelled around to all of the national parks in America. And the inside, it's kitted out with all the different coloured threads and spools and sewing machines. And all the national parks, they just said, hey, come to us. Like, bring your stuff. It doesn't have to be Patagonia. We will repair any of your gear. And so people would turn up to this van and go, here's my ripped jacket. Patagonia went, yeah, sure, no worries. We will sew that up. We will fix it. And we're doing it because we want you to continue loving your product because we want you to love the outdoors, because we want you to love the planet. So I just think that's what you're doing repair for. You're repairing because you love it. And I love this last bit this is actually from the former CEO of Patagonia. So this holiday season, I have an early New Year's resolution for the sake of planet Earth. Let's all become radical environmentalists. And all you need is a sewing kit and a set of repair instructions. And Patagonia actually lets you download them for free for all of their products off their website. So that's it, repair. Repair's amazing. You're all amazing. That's all I have to say. Questions or? Questions? Yep. I should also say my phone is broken and I'm not repairing it because I love the fact it's broken because it hasn't made a noise for about 2 years. It's awesome. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so John August again, Pirate Party of Australia. So I'm thinking about what the last two, well, both yourself and the last speaker were talking about things ending up as landfill, be it, sort of low value produce or clothes.
Yep.
And one of the things you also, I've spoken about GDP, productivity, there's also employment, what's another thing? Oh yes, inflation, all these figures. Now, one of the things is, perversely, the more stuff we chuck out, the more landfill, the more economic activity there is, and the more jobs there are, and the more we can say, oh, look at our employment figures, it's absolutely wonderful. Now, in a normal economy, we're all wringing our hands about employment. The economy's got a bit crazy just lately with COVID, but normally we're wringing our hands about employment, and the government's running around saying, how can we increase the employment rate? I know, over here we'll dump more shit in the garbage dumps and there'll be more work and more employment and we'll look really good. And I think that's one of the contradictions that I guess is actually hidden there. And one of the things is if somebody repairs something without getting paid for it, we're obviously increasing the value in the economy, but it's not showing up in the GDP figures and the government can't crow about it. There's a lot of abuse of GDP, perhaps we've all heard. I mean, I know the last government was saying, oh, look, we run all these, bureaucratic reforms and the GDP goes up. And I'm thinking, no, I think there's a bit more to it than that. But the last thing I'll say before I sign out, look, individuals will want to get stuff repaired if it can be done conveniently and affordably. Obviously, once upon a time, people used to go to the boot repairers at the local shopping centre. I'm sure people are still willing to do that. It's a matter of saying repairs are affordable and convenient. And that's where the dollar kicks in. And I suppose I push along about intellectual property that basically the economic incentives are such that firms, it's not economic for them to make repairable stuff. And yes, the economy's messed up, but I've already said that. Sorry. Okay.
Are there any other questions in the room?
Dana King from Edge Environment again. Loved your presentation. Probably to build on John's point is rather than looking at we don't have any data for the GDP is to look more towards what metrics we are doing for textiles. So I know like QUT are doing a lot at looking at the mapping the ecosystem for pre-consumer textile waste.
Yeah.
And obviously you're doing a lot of work and you've mentioned a lot of other groups in Australia doing a lot of work. Can you speak a bit of, or what you're aware of in terms of gathering metrics on the repair of textiles or the reuse of textiles, if anything is happening there and connecting between the different actors?
There is a woman, I'd have to search her name out and I can send it to you. I know there is some work being done, Gold Coast, is it Gold Coast Uni or Sunshine Coast University? Sunshine, yeah, I think there is a lady there who is doing quite a bit of work on repair and trying to understand the repairing of textiles. So I think there's a little bit, but not a huge amount at the moment. And I don't believe, although I will go back and double check, I don't think that was being captured in the big report that's just been done for the Australian Fashion Council. So if you go onto the Australian Fashion Council's site, there's 2 reports that have just been released which have been done for the product as background papers for the product stewardship scheme. Peter Allen's work on data my recollection of it, I could be wrong though, was that it was looking at how much is being imported, how much is then going to waste, but I'm not sure that how much is being repaired. That middle bit was covered, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, I'll have a look at those two. It's an interesting point. You refer to it's the end of the life cycle that we look at, and there's that gap in circular economy. So I contributed to the ASUB's paper on circular metrics in Australia.
It's
we
a really
spoke
good
a lot
paper.
about there's just nothing in the middle of it. So there's so much work happening in this space. It'd be fantastic to record it and build out that space of metrics.
Thank you. It's also interesting. I could have a whole conversation. Like, it's very interesting about the makeup of clothing also, and this comes down to whether clothing is then able to even be repaired, because the amount of synthetics that we have, so much synthetic fibre, and it's not necessarily great quality. And so a t-shirt that you paid $3 or $5 for, that has fallen apart after a couple of washes, or you can't get that stain out, or, it's ripped, no one's going to repair that. So it would be fascinating to know what can be repaired that's not being repaired versus what just can't be repaired. I think, John, I don't know whether you know anything more about...
Not specifically, but just to the point around metrics and data. There's a major project that the Commonwealth Government has funded, the Environment Department, around the benefits and effectiveness of product stewardship. So it's a foundational piece of work. It's yet to go live. But that's involved a whole lot of research and discovery, both in terms of interviews with key actors and stakeholders and specialists, but also a big community survey, a survey of schemes as well, under the broad heading of product stewardship in EPR. One of the areas that we've looked at really more closely there is how do we get away from this peculiarly Australian view of product stewardship generally being seen as an end-of-life response or policy response, etc. So we've really tried to look at how we map across all of the schemes, whether they are industry collective schemes or individual business and brand schemes, across the life cycle. So what are they really doing at materials choice, design, business model, production, smart logistics, all the way through to the various options. So that is really going to be foundational in terms of looking at, from a life cycle perspective, not just, how do we fund and run end-of-life schemes, which in many cases we still need, but part of that is touching on how do we extend the life of products? What is the role of repair and modularity and all of those things? So that, it won't answer all of that question, but it's partly looking and acknowledging at this issue of that work. And that's being led by ISF at UTS and in partnership with the Centre of Excellence in Product Stewardship. But it's just sort of really starting to acknowledge that repair, it needs to be elevated more in terms of one of the tools there for all the reasons that everyone's mentioned.
ISF at UTS also did an awesome paper they released a couple of months ago now on a wellbeing wardrobe. I highly recommend people go and read it. And I should have noted there was one stat that I had up there that I didn't point out. Part of that work and part of some other work, research that fed into that paper, we need to be buying 75% less than what we currently buy. It was one headline statistic, but their whole work around what is a wellbeing wardrobe. So if you start with wellbeing and then you look at, well, how do you then buy, what do you buy, or how do you fit within, how do you talk about clothing within a wellbeing structure? It's a really, really good piece of work. Highly recommend having a look at it.
Was that UTS?
Yeah, ISF, the Institute of Sustainable Futures. It was covered quite a bit in the conversation, and I think The Guardian picked it up as well.
I have more of a comment than a question. I have found through my own journey of repairing clothes that it becomes quite obvious quite quickly when you start to do your own repairs about why it's worth investing more time to understand about quality and about what is it that I'm actually buying, because it becomes really obvious really quickly. Like, if it's a terrible fabric, I don't want to spend time repairing that. I'm taking ownership of this thing and I'm bringing it into my life, but if I don't want to spend the time to repair it, then I'm going to make different choices. And I feel like if there's more, I don't know, just sort of understanding or education within the community about these kind of things, that people may make different choices about what they're purchasing.
I think education is key, and education starting at primary school level. So a couple of the Sustainable Development Goals have as indicators education to lead a more sustainable life. Like I think it's 8.4, 8.7 and 4.6. Anyways, so the whole idea is that we need to do more. The whole world needs to do more to educate people on what leading a sustainable life existence means. Part of that to me when it comes to clothing is actually educating people from a very young age. What does polyester mean? Like, what actually is in polyester? What is linen? Like, do you know that linen comes from the linen plant, which is grown in these particular areas of the world? And do you know polyester comes from oil? Like, I feel it's that basic kind of, not basic, it's basic to me because I've been in this world for a while. It's not basic to primary school kids, and it's not basic to some of maybe their parents. And so I feel educating on what's gone into making of your clothes in the first place, and then how do you look after those products, and why is it important to understand what's in it and how you take care of it, and then that whole journey, and then the people who made it, what were they, how did they make it, what conditions were they in, what was all of that. Like, we've kind of, again, maybe because it's out of sight, out of mind, so if that river getting polluted in Indonesia, well, that's not my river, that's someone else's river in a totally different country. Well, no, that's not cool, because actually, as we know from climate change, like, it's actually all related and all interlinked. So we do have to care. To care, we have to know. Like, we've got to understand and have that knowledge in order to then have that connection.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Julie. Thanks again. That was excellent. So we'll give one more round of applause. And thank you to Brendan. And Guido just whispered in my ear that he's happy for us to move to a general discussion, that he will contribute that way. I think probably just the point that we left off here really raises a very important point about community repair more generally, and this is something that I would say that the Productivity Commission also struggled with, and that is evidence, and that is the data story that really is not being told about what is being done and how much repair is happening in community events. So Guido was right that there wasn't a huge amount of attention paid in the final report of the Productivity Commission. Final report, although there were submissions made by a number of community repairers and community repair cafes. But having spoken to the commissioners, what they were struggling with across the whole of the sectors, and this is not just in community repair, but within agriculture, within consumer electronics as well, how do we show that this is a problem? And this is a very important story that I think we need to continue as a community to build and tell and share. I think we have lessons to be learned from the automotive industry in terms of the campaign that was a grassroots campaign. And Leslie, perhaps you might, I'm going to pass the mic to you, just Leslie Yates from the AAA really led the charge on getting a grassroots movement around the independent mechanic and the workshop, that they were the people being thwarted in conducting their businesses. And I think I'd really like you to share your story, because I think what we really need to inform our policymakers and regulators is that this is happening out there, but how we have to make that visible. And this is one way I think it's a really good story. Leslie?
Thanks, Leanne. I think we did feed into that issue about how you count economic value. So for us, it was about, we were full of anecdotes. Our whole industry is full of anecdotes. There's always a story about this repair or that repair. So our story is that it was taking us hours to perform what should have been a basic repair. So car is brought in, mechanic is looking for 6 or 7 hours for the answer. The answer was easy. It was a 25-minute fix. So that's a good 6.5 hours of labour wasted. So we set about quantifying that. We asked each mechanic to think about the last vehicle that gave them a problem, to specify what those labour hours were, where was the cost passed on. It was not passed on to the consumer, of course not. You can't charge a customer for a repair that you're not performing. So we were able to quantify that 6.5 hours, aggregate that up. About 11% of vehicles had a repair that should have been easy and was not. And I think that issue about lost productivity lands well on the economic policymakers. So we were able to quantify a whole lot of labour, not used for anything valuable, no contribution to our economy, just a waste, sunk expenditure. And that in itself provided good numbers around all of what was a whole lot of scatty, this Ford Falcon, this Camry. Those things just don't land well, and they were hungry for data. And I think that major survey that we launched, and also the ability of the repairers to get on board. They got it. They understood what we were trying to do. Don't overdo it. Give me exactly the vehicle, explain to me what happened, and aggregating those numbers up. I think that was an absolute game changer.
I think that's so true, and there's so many lessons that, when you look across the sectors that we're looking at, consumer electronics, agriculture, medical devices, we're talking in mining, we're talking military, there are lessons that we can draw from the automotive industry because they've been fighting this battle for 15 years, and they've actually convinced the regulators that it was time to intervene. Voluntary arrangements didn't work. The promises were made but weren't upheld. So it was only that we now have a mandatory data law. So what I'm seeing internationally, and I think we can always learn from what is happening well overseas, not that we should adopt it wholesale, but we can make it fit and look at what bits we like and change for our unique regulatory environment here in Australia. There is a project running in the UK now, essentially the big repair project that's running, where it's like a really big website where they're asking all the repairers to actually log their repairs. So there's a data collection exercise. And really that's what it is at the moment. They have future plans, and we're working, talking with them about those plans. But at the moment, they just want to do data collection about who's repairing, how much, what are the things repairing. So part of the International Repair Cafe Foundation is also linked with the repair monitors. So there is an ability to actually track for repair cafes to do that data gathering. Now, speaking at the coalface to the conveners, they're saying, look, honestly, some Saturday mornings we're inundated with so many people who bring all sorts of equipment, electrical equipment, clothing, everything. We don't have enough repairers there for us to ask our volunteers to start asking questions about what's the device, what's the brand, what was wrong with it, what parts did you need, did you fix it, did you not fix it? That is really what we'd love to have from every repairer out there in the community, because one of the recommendations in the Productivity Commission that we haven't spoken of, and we won't really touch on that tomorrow in the Repair Summit, is this idea that organisations such as Choice or peak consumer organisations can bring an action on behalf of consumers where there is a problem across a whole brand, for example. So if we know, for example, that brand X continually breaks down, and at every repair cafe in Australia, everyone is bringing that same object in to be fixed for that very same purpose. The problem with our Australian consumer law at the moment is we have rights under Australian consumer law, the consumer guarantees, to take our products that we purchase back for repair, refund, or replacement. But I'm not going to fight a big global brand about my microwave. I don't have that power. I may be legally in the right position because the warranty was short. It was a 12-month warranty. The machine may have broken down after 2 years. But reasonable consumer guarantees would say that that product should last for more than that 1 or 2 year period. I spend $700 on a fridge or more, $2,000 on a fridge. Why should I be left in this limbo land after the 2 year warranty under the manufacturer's warranty expires? Under Australian consumer law, we have rights to take those goods back to the manufacturers for a period after that manufacturer warranty. There's not a lot of clarity or understanding out in the community about what that time frame is. And what I thought was very interesting in the draft report for the Productivity Commission was that they actually asked the ACCC to indicate, get the manufacturers to indicate what should be the lifespan of your product. So there was going to be a product categorization around white goods saying if you produce a fridge, should that fridge be 5 or 7 years duration? That would have been fantastic. That wasn't picked up in the final report, but we know ourselves if we spend $2,000 on a fridge or a dishwasher, that we expect it to last for more than 1 or 2 years. So this gap between consumer warranties and guarantees under the ACL and what we expect a reasonable product lifespan is really where the regulators need to look, I think, in terms of attention, and giving the ability of our consumer peak bodies to act on behalf of a group of consumers who have been aggrieved by the same product failing in the same way over and over again will empower consumers and also send a message back to the brand manufacturers that this is a problem. Matthew, did you have anything to add? Because I think it was envisaged by the Productivity Commission that perhaps Choice may be one of those organisations that could bring the super complaint.
Yes, that is what we call it, a super complaint. It's interesting you mentioned the fact that there's an expectation that consumers have, that we have as consumers, and the manufacturer expectation for how long their products should last. They have internal knowledge which should tell them how long certain parts are going to last. They know what parts are most likely to deteriorate over time. You can often tell that through, if you do some deep research, you can find out which parts are going to fail over time just through what parts are supplied commonly. So there's ways to do that, but we actually went out and asked a lot of brands, what are the things that actually fail? How long is your expectation? We didn't get a lot of responses, but consumers, we actually took all that data down. So we have the consumer expectations averaged across Australia from about 5,000 people to say this is actually what people expect to get from a fridge that's worth $300 or $1,000 or $2,000. So there's some really good information there that if the Productivity Commission wanted to, they could actually just start with that data.
Yes.
So, they know already. They just haven't taken it up yet.
They can select what evidence and data they want.
Yes, exactly. And I think for those probably online, I know we have people from all different parts of Australia and overseas, is that one of the concerns that we have who are working in this space, the Productivity Commission did a great job, probably didn't do everything that everyone was hoping, but once their report is handed to government, they essentially go on to other things. So there is no living entity at the moment in terms of policy making or government that has carriage of right to repair as the Productivity Commission looked at it. So essentially their report was handed to government and that is the end of that story. So that is part of the reason for these discussions and dialogues that we're having, because there was some real gems in that report that I think we could call low-hanging fruit. We already have the groundbreaking first piece of legislation. There is some very simple changes or starting up a review to look into certain practices or looking into certain industries where we know that is a problem. Those are things that really we need to send a message to our policymakers that it's time for those. And there's so much effort that's been done by the ACCC as well as the Productivity Commission. The work has been done, and that those recommendations really are worth having another look at going forward. I'm conscious of the fact, so I've been talking over the probably people in the Slido. Are there any other questions or comments, perhaps?
I've got a question from Slido.
Terrific, John. Thank you. Can I get the microphone to you? Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. This one is from Annette Bain, and she runs the Reconnect project. And I'll just read out what she's sent here. Concern that when opened up to repair businesses and part suppliers, that it'll become overrun with the business angle. The Reconnect project is a small not-for-profit engaging with local community who come to us to ask for repairs of all kinds of items, not just electronics. How can the repair community balance the inequity between large for-profit suppliers having resources to spend promoting themselves as repair providers, service providers, versus smaller community initiatives? So that's a question from Annette Bain around, big providers, well-resourced versus smaller community, which touches on some of the things that were raised by others earlier. So that's a question.
That's a very good question. Would anyone like to answer that very good question? Thank you, Annette. John, you have a few minutes. I have some thoughts, but...
Yes, John August here. Look, I don't have an answer to that question, but I will make an observation that, like we've been saying, hey, it's a good idea for people to be paid to be repairers. And I'm saying, look, if somebody can actually repair something conveniently at a cost rather less than the price to purchase a new one, in one sense, everybody wins. But I know that outside of this domain, there's this idea that sometimes communities will get together, push forward an initiative, turn it into something great and wonderful, and then these corporate vultures will sweep in and take it over. So, I guess I identify that as the two sides of the coin. The positive of like the ecosystem with everybody doing their bit, but the other end of the spectrum where you have the vulture corporates swooping in. And I think there are too many stories of a positive community initiative being taken over by the corporate vultures in other parts of the economy. So that's my observation there.
Thank you, John. I think the story, the insights that Julie shared and really part of the community that we're part of today is the value is in taking your car to your local mechanic. I really a lot of people, don't take any joy in taking it back to the manufacturer. And so when you talk about global giants coming in and swallowing up some businesses, there's a very strong shop local movement where communities are trying to support other communities. And in terms of having someone local who can fix your shoes or fix your watch or do your mending for you, or whether it be your toaster or your any household appliance, I think there is more and more in terms of the footprints that we're talking about, more people wanting to do the right thing in terms of spending that money in their local communities. And there are a lot of businesses, small businesses, that are doing very, very well by servicing local communities. And yes, we can never fight against global giants. We see them across all kind of industries, but there are very strong surviving. And I think the automotive industry, look at all of those, how many thousand workshops in Australia? 35,000 workshops, repair workshops in Australia. So local garages repairing family cars. I mean, that's a huge kind of industry. What is it worth? 43 billion, roughly. So, Julie. Thank you, Annette.
Thanks. Maybe also it's about taking a more holistic view of the problem or the solution. So I live here in Canberra, and in Canberra there's lots of, every suburb has its own little community street of shops, and some community shops thriving more than others, and in a lot there can be one or two vacant buildings or one or two vacant lots. And I've often thought, imagine if you could use one of those shops and turn that into a little repair spot or a little hub or a little something. And in so doing, not only do you bring So the suburb I live in, there's a lot of retiree people who could come down and a lot of kids. And so again, you have the shop front that is at a discount rate that's kind of a community centre where you drop in, which is essentially how I see repair cafes as operating. And it is this community space where people can go into the IGA or the local supermarket that's there, you grab a coffee, there's a takeaway food shop usually, there's a pizza shop or something else, and then there's this little shop that hasn't been used for anything else. It is a repair, stop, have a chat, fix something, pick up something, there's a free library there, like a lot of different things can happen. So it's not just there's one spot somewhere for a repair that sits out there. It's actually built into the whole community infrastructure, which I think is a way of looking at it that is solving a whole lot of problems at once.
Thank you. Oh, good. I was just about to say, Brendan, are you worried about being swallowed up by a global giant?
No, it's not part of the roadmap that we have for Fixable. Look, I kind of see Fixable as a platform where a whole range of organisations and individuals can do what they do. I think it's important to, I mentioned earlier that we would have a special space for businesses to promote themselves. The rest of the space is definitely for community members, but it's all about making repair more convenient and accessible for people anywhere. So that would include professional repairers and spare parts sellers, as well as the hobbyists and the community groups, repair cafes, any organisation that's going to make repair and reuse more accessible and convenient, so we can really make it mainstream, so that that no matter what your item is and what's wrong with it, you could jump on Fixable and know that you can find somebody nearby to help you with it.
Thank you, Brendan. Are there any other questions or comments? Bryce, would you like to share a little bit of some of the insights? I've got the microphone, Kanchana, because Bryce from EMPR, who have sponsored this summit, and I've had a very good dialogue about some of the challenges that you have faced. And I'd be interested, because I think we're talking a lot about community repair, but you're operating a business in our community as well. And so we'd be interested to hear.
Yeah, look, thank you. And look, this is our first time coming to this event. I've only started working with Leanne really recently, and look, we're happy to be here. For us, it's more about understanding what's going on in the community. Where do we see ourselves as a business so we can continue to support the community? So yes, at EMPR we sell computer parts. We're the authorised only distributors for like Lenovo, HP, Toshiba, Dynabook, Lexmark. So there is no one else in Australia who's authorised. So we were originally brought on to service the reseller market, the repair companies, service companies, but over the years there's been more and more push to support the end users, the consumers, mums and dads and the corporates directly. So we've had to change the way we developed our business, list our parts online and make them available so a consumer can come in just with a model number or just a serial on the machine, not knowing what they actually need, find the actual part they need.
Sorry. Brian, is the mic on? Bryce, do you want to come up here? That'd be easier.
No, so yeah, look, as I was saying, so we were originally very much reseller focused for the manufacturers, and then over the last 7 or 8 years, we've found more and more consumers wanting to be able to engage and buy spare parts directly because they want the self-service. YouTube become a lot more powerful, people putting up videos and service manuals and stuff like that. So we had to change the way we developed our online e-commerce systems and complete ecosystem, how we sell parts. The data we receive is very complex. It's rich in data, but it's not understandable by mums and dads or even most businesses out there unless you're technically minded and been trained, which these days is only passed down from people to people in the IT industry. There is no official training anymore. Not when I went to TAFE like 24 years ago. They used to make us pull PCs apart, make us build them. That doesn't exist now. Now it's all coding and software and stuff like that. So we, as a business, have invested heavily internally in taking that data, building the bill of materials, go out, find our own data elsewhere to match with their data, so then we can enable customers, community repair centres, small resellers, big service companies to come in just with a serial number, find that bomb, find all the pictures, we bring all the images in ourselves, take all the photos ourselves of millions and millions of parts, so then you can go, okay, I need exactly that part, add it to the cart, and we ship it to you next day. And we carry all the inventory as well. From there, we also see, the machine's available, and it could be that the part you need is not available anymore because it's end of service life. Or it could be they did a very small run, especially during COVID, we're finding machines were getting ran, small quantities sold, spare parts were never available. So then we had to go out and find the sources ourselves, working with the brands or indirectly through our own channels to ensure you could buy those parts to service those machines and bring them into market, store them in country. So we look at our SEO data, we look at all our different touch points to see what are customers searching for, especially consumers, and making sure we bring that in stock in country and hold it so it's available next day. Because you don't want to wait 4 or 5 weeks for a screen, a replacement battery for your notebook, and that's what used to happen, and that's what we do, is ensure that you get those parts immediately for the brands we support. So,
do you want to talk about the schools as well?
Yeah, so we do a lot with schools. We do directly with schools and also indirectly with all the service agents. So, we plan with our education partners, especially understanding the fleet they got in their environment. We then we understand what their usage is going to be over the next 1 to 2 years, 3 years. We make sure those parts are available in country for when their school holiday periods come, that we've got them available. So that's plastics, and that's keyboards, that's top covers, that's screens. Because during those school holiday periods, especially a lot of the private schools and Catholic system, will take all those machines back, we'll bring them back to make them look nice and new and shiny for the kids. But if you would come to us tomorrow and say you want to buy 600 plastics, that's a 5-month wait from a factory to tool up in China somewhere through the manufacturer or directly go into the plant. You can't switch that on overnight. So we plan with them to do that. And then we did notice during COVID too, a lot of the schools couldn't get their new equipment arrive this financial year, or start of the school year. So we had to work with the schools to find out where they were at, especially the service partners as well, and make sure we carried the lifespan of those parts longer. So normally we would transition those parts off as the new machines kick up. So we're making sure we went out and took those stock positions so we can continue to service those customers, both directly, indirectly through service agents, teach schools directly and parents directly, however, whichever way the school service the machines. So, but yeah.
Did you get any pushback from brands?
In which way?
Starting to go to the general consumer.
No, it's actually the brands. We're in spare parts, not in products, as distribution. So all our agreements are written that we've got to be there to service the entire market from top to bottom. It started more with HP originally, then when we worked with Lenovo directly to build it, we designed it that way because they didn't have a go-to-market strategy because IBM used to service their parts. So when I built it, we said we will start here and service all your key service providers, right down through your reseller network. If all your corporate education wants to buy directly, and then your home users, your mum and dads, we would service each tier and build the systems to support everyone and set all the pricing up differently. So, we encourage people to buy wherever they feel comfortable. We do see more and more end users buying directly, even if you look back 3 years ago, and it's all because everyone's technical, a lot more technical now. You go back 4 years ago, you couldn't get data on how to pull a machine apart. Even we couldn't. There was brands telling us that we should only be sending a customer to a service centre and paying a premium to install that part. Where now, there's YouTube videos online. Like the brands, HP, Lenovo, are actually sponsoring and putting up YouTube videos. Because of what's happened in Europe, they've now launched all that globally. So you get access to the same advice and 45-minute videos. So yeah, the videos are there now, how to pull your machine right apart, service your own machine. So that enables us to sell more, but also sell directly. And yeah, it's changing a lot. It's definitely evolving, but it's been good for us, and it's just good to make sure we can service everyone. But we have a lot of challenges, with COVID, supply chain, but we've got to do our own forecasting. We get no support on that. That's all on us. It's all our investment in inventory, risk.
Do you think HP see you as an outsourced provider effectively now?
Sorry, John.
Do you think companies like HP effectively see you as an outsourced parts division that they would have once managed? Like, is it in their interest and your interest?
Well, they used to manage it in-house. We're both, me and Michael are both from ex-Door Digital HP Compact. They used to manage it in-house, and then they moved it out when it wasn't cost-effective, but also more, that was many, many years ago. It's more about bringing more value to the market and bringing alternative solutions. So we're definitely not, I wouldn't say we don't see it as a competitor. It's definitely an outsourced partner because it's a distribution model. If we are a distributor, we sign an agreement. But then from that agreement, it's what we can do to bring value to the brand, but more to the customer and the end customer, and then deal with the challenges of end of life constrained. How do we continue to service those customers, not just say no, which is what we do.
Thanks.
That's no worries.
Are there any other questions for Bryce? I just thought that's a really interesting insight, and I think the point that Bryce was making is the fact that now people, it is easy to go onto the internet and search, this is broken with my machine, can I fix it myself? And that whole kind of open environment around repair. There's some fantastic websites, and I know Karen and Danny Ellis, really do a lot of social media activity around the repair that Danny does. Hello, Wayne, you've just joined us. So I think, this whole idea about how to keep things in operation, people are prepared to make that investment, and to be able to buy spare parts is really, and that's really fundamentally what the Productivity Commission identified, is that, at the very basics, we should be able to get spare parts for the things that we buy. That is a very simple thing. And secondly, that we should be able to get the repair service manual or the service information for that device as well. OEMs that argue that it's unsafe for people to repair electrical devices, it is even more unsafe when people are going in blind. If there is a repair manual provided and the correct spare parts are provided, then trained people could conduct that repair safely. And I think we've also learned that from the motor vehicle industry as well, because there was concerns around EVs, electric vehicles as well. So I'm conscious of the time because of the weather and because of the fact that people might be travelling. I am very mindful of the fact that our online audience hasn't had the benefit of being present here today and participating in the same way. I hope that our Slido system has worked effectively for you and that your questions have come through and been answered. I invite you, if there's any concerns, to email me directly, and I'll be able to probably reach out to the people who've been speaking today and put you in contact if they're willing to take up any points that we haven't been able to touch on in our discussions today. To draw to a close, I would like to again thank our speakers very much today for what I think has been a really diverse and interesting discussion around community repair. And I hope that many of you here today will be able to join us tomorrow at the Australian Repair Summit, where we are looking at more specifically some of those recommendations that have been made by the Productivity Commission. The program is available online, and I'm happy to speak to anyone about it today. I again would like to thank the staff of the National Library and all of my team in the Australian Repair Network and my lovely volunteers today. And thank you once again for coming. And I really hope that you take this opportunity to talk to your fellow repairers and within the repair community. If you are interested in keeping in touch, we have the ability for you to sign up to the Australian Repair Network through our website. You just look at Australian Repair Network and put Griffith University into a Google and you will come to there. There is some information sheets there about where, like as Brendan said, he has a great resource with when repair cafes are operating, but we've also tried to pull together the Facebook sites for most of the repair cafes in Australia and provide that, because we really think we are stronger when we work together in this community. And I think the more that we work together and share our experiences, the stronger that we'll be. So I thank you all once again for coming and for your contributions today. We hope to continue a series of workshops around community repair, and I welcome any feedback that you have. And I really hope that we will see you again tomorrow, if not in person, online. So thank you once again.